Everyone, welcome to another deck profile, and today I'm bringing Dynamists. I'm going to say this much, this is probably my favorite deck I have played throughout my years of Yu-Gi-Oh! Simply because it's just so much fun to play. It's a fun little machine deck with level 4s and 5s, and it's a fairly simple pendulum deck. That is also somewhat generic. Their monster effects and their pendulum effects, not really. Well, some of them not really, but others, yeah. And you can also splash other archetypes in. Like, as you can see, I'm running synchros in my extra deck. I'll get into that when we get into the deck profile. So let's jump right on in. Starting us off, we have 3 copies, if my third copy would stop being shy. 3 copies of Dynamist Rex. I'll say this much now, all the 6 scales have the same effect for their pendulum effect, where if a Dynamist is targeted for a card effect, you can destroy this card in the scale and then negate it. But Rex's monster effect, let me actually read it because it's been forever since I've actually played the deck, but I do love this deck. If it attacks, and at the end of the damage step, you tribute another Dynamist monster to activate one of 2 effects. It can make a second attack in a row, and if it attacks a monster, it can do piercing. Or you can, shuffle a card from your opponent's hand at random or on their side of the field back into the deck, and he gains 100 attack. Which, I mean, that's not bad. I mean, and he is only 2400 attack for a level 5 machine. But again, level 5 machine. Keep that in mind. Next up, we have 3 copies of Dynamist Breccia. Dynamist Breccia, I think, could be splashed into almost any pendulum deck, simply because his monster effect, it's a go second card. It's definitely a go second card, but his monster effect is if your opponent controls the highest, or the monster with the highest attack points, and you don't already control a copy of this card, just straight up special summon it. So it's a slightly worse Cyber Dragon, but it's a pendulum monster, which can honestly help pendulum monsters. It's also a 2000 attack point, level 5 machine that summons itself. So, you know, really good. And like I said, all 6 scales have the same effect. Next up, 3 copies, if I could get it all off the deck. There we go. 3 copies of Dynamist Plesiosaur. He's honestly one of the better level 4s in the deck, in my personal opinion, because his monster effect is your opponent's monsters lose 100 attack and defense for each Dynamist card you control. Emphasis on the card, because some of their spells and traps are Dynamist cards as well. So if you have 3 copies of this up in your monster zone with 2 other Dynamist monsters, and then your spell and trap zone is filled with nothing but Dynamist cards, that's 3000 attack points gone. And then throw one up here in the extra monster zone, and that's 3300 attack. I mean, it's nothing to scoff at. Next up, for the last 6 scale, we have 3 copies of Dynamist Anke. I'm personally not a fan of this card. It could have been so much better. It's basically a macrocosmos, archetypal macrocosmos. Anything destroyed by battle with a Dynamist monster is banished instead, which is I don't prefer it, and it's only a 1500 attack body, but a 2k defense wall. So, but it's gonna get beat over no matter what. Starting us off in the 3 scales, we have 3 copies of Dynamist Taryn, and I will say this much: 3 scales fall under the same thing that the 6 scales do, where all the 3 scale effects are basically non-targeting removal. Basically, if they would be destroyed by battle or card effect, destroy it in the scale instead. And then Taryn says whenever it destroys a monster your opponent controls by battle, sends it to the graveyard, search for a Dynamist card. Simple as that. And he's an 1800 level 4, or 1800 body on a level 4. Not bad. Next up, another one of my least favorites in the deck. That's 3 copies of Dynamist Stegosaur. Stegosaur. Don't know why they just didn't name him Stego, but his monster effect, I'm iffy about. It's basically if your pendulum monster, I believe? Yeah, if another pendulum monster you control battles a monster after damage calc, destroy those monsters. So basically, run one of your smaller Dynamists into something that's big, and then you remove both of them with Stegosaur. Which, I mean, he's on-spot, non-targeting removal. It's meh. But he's also a worse body than Anke at 1600 attack and 1800 defense. I honestly view that as worse, so yeah. I'm not a fan of Stegosaur or Anke. Which, if it was my choice, I'd probably put them down to 2, but with my build, I need them at 3. Next up, another card that I believe could be splashed in as a go second card. 3 copies of Seratops. So basically, the thing is you're going to run, or what I'm thinking is, for Pendulum decks, run 3 copies of both Seratops and maybe just 2 copies of each in your side deck. Because Seratops can special summon itself from the hand if you control a Dynamist monster, and it's a 2100 attack point monster. So it's basically a Cyber Dragon. But you have to control a Dynamist monster, and obviously that's not that hard to do, with the archetype only being level 4s and 5s, and some of the level 5s having built-in special summons, such as Ceratops and Brachion. Next up, which I think, this is the last of the Dynamist monsters, and it's Dynamist Spynose. Spynose is my favorite monster in this whole deck, simply because he's your OTK machine. He has a not once per turn, right? Yep, a not once per turn tribute a Dynamist you control, another Dynamist you control, to gain one of 2 effects, where he can attack directly or attack twice. So basically, tribute 2 other Dynamists, he can attack your opponent directly twice, and he's a 2500 attack point monster. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's honestly pretty good. And if you pair it with limiter removal, the field spell, anything like that, you basically have game if you get 2 copies of him on the board and 3 other Dynamists. Because one of them you can tribute for both effects, and the other one you just tribute to attack directly. That's, 56 there, plus another 28. That's 8,400 points of damage. So he's really good. And to finish off the monsters, one Deskbot 1. I only run him as a 1-of because you don't really need to synchro summon in this deck. You mainly want to be link summoning. And this deck, I will admit, got hit really bad whenever Electromite went away. But Deskbot 1 is your tuner. He can summon himself back from the graveyard if you special summon 2 machine monsters at the same time via pendulum summoning. And he gains 500 attack for each machine monster you control, so he gets pretty big sometimes too. But yeah, that's it for the monsters. Now moving on to the spells, we have 3 copies of Dinomest Charge. Honestly, the best card in the deck. Whenever it's activated, you can search and add any Dynamist monster from your deck to your hand. And then, once per turn, whenever a Dynamist monster is sent from the field to the extra deck, you can add one back to your hand. It's a mandatory effect to add back to hand. So it doesn't miss timing. But yeah, it's honestly really good. It also rotas for any Dynamist, which is amazing. Next up, for the last 3 of Spell card, we have 3 Moray of Greed. And honestly, I think this is the last 3 of in the deck. Everything else is 2 or lower. So Moray of Greed fixes your hand. You shuffle 2 water monsters back into your deck and draw 3 cards, which is not bad. It's really good hand fixing, and I really appreciate it being the way it is, and the fact that it's waters. You shuffle back waters. You don't have to shuffle back fish or aquas. You shuffle back waters, man. And the whole deck is water minus Despot 1. Anyways, next up we have 2 copies of Dynamic Power Load. Dynamic Power Load, I honestly think, is underrated for the deck. Yeah, it gives a mediocre 300 attack point boost, but it also turns all Dynomists into an Armades. So, you know, that Spynose thing I was talking about earlier, yeah, your opponent can't do anything in the battle phase when you do that. I know most stuff happens in the main phase, which is why I only run it at 2, because I'm going to be honest, when I ran it at 3, I would see 2 copies of it in my hand all the time, no matter how I shuffle. And if I didn't see it, it was an all-monster hand with Dinomest Charge, which is basically what you want to see. Next up for another 2 of, obviously I mentioned it earlier, 2 limiter removal. Still limited to 2, or still semi-limited. Makes me sad. But you know, double the attack points of all machine monsters you control. Nah, I mean, I'm not opposed. It turns 1 copy of Spynose into an OTK machine that can pump out 11,000 points of damage. So, you know, and then the drawback of having all of them destroyed on end phase, who cares? That's not a drawback. And our last spell in the deck, Raigeki. Because if you don't get your Spynose out or have anything you want to tribute for Spynose, you're going to be clearing your board or your opponent's board with this. Next up for the traps, we only have 2 different traps, and we have 2 copies of Dynamist Howling. Let me explain this card. And you could bump this up to 3 if you want. I just don't have good experience with it at 3. But whenever it's activated, you can basically set your scales straight out of the deck. Like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll take it. So instead of dumping your hand into your scales, you can basically set up a small board on your opponent's turn, or on your opponent's draw phase, flip this up, get your scales. And it has another effect, that once per turn, you can tribute a Dynomist monster you control. And then you can compulse something. So it's a archetypal continuous compulse, which is amazing. I love this card, and I would recommend bumping it up to 3, but again, in my experience, 2 is just enough. And it's very searchable if you use Taryn. And last up for the traps, we have 2 copies of Dynamist Rush. Special summon all it does is special summon a Dynamist monster from the deck, and it becomes unaffected by all card effects on the field. So it's okay, I guess. It's a hard once per turn. If it wasn't a hard once per turn, I'm pretty sure this card would be way too broken. But that's why it's a trap card, and it's a hard once per turn, and it's not really the best thing in the world. It's honestly like you set it, your opponent attacks, and then you flip this up and they don't get the direct attack. So, you know, it's fine by me. At 2. So that's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we have 1 copy of High Speedroid Chimbara. You can make this fairly simply, and it's a really good synchro monster. It can make a second attack during each battle phase, and whenever it battles, it gains 200 attack. If it's sent to the graveyard, target one of your banished speedroids, add it to your hand. Mainly, you're just going to be using it for the fact that it's a 20 or 2k body that can keep growing, and it attacks twice. So that's mainly the only reason you use it. Whew, excuse me, I had an itch. I still have an itch, but I will get it in a minute. It's on my back. Next up, we have Ally of Justice, Catastro, because really good. If he battles anything that's not a dark, destroy it, it's gone. Yeah, I know it's not really the best thing right now in the meta. Oh, say hello to a cat. Let me just move her out of the way right quick. Yes, there is a cat out here. It's very unprofessional. So, next up, we have Brio. Honestly, he's a iffy choice. If you don't want to run him, you don't have to. There are plenty of other generic level 6 synchros. You can even replace him with a level 5 synchro if you plan to make more level 5s and level 6s. But Brio is just discard 2 cards, bounce 2 cards your opponent controls back, or 2 cards on the field back to the hand. Say hello to the cat again. Let me move you. Go on. I swear I'm not picking her up and throwing her. Next up, we have 1 copy of Metaphys Horus. You're always going to get the pendulum effect for this guy. Always. Always, always, always. Which is, I think, take control of a monster. Yeah, your opponent chooses a monster they control, and you gain control of it, and it can't attack for that turn, but that's fine. I mean, you slap this thing on the board, and you immediately get something from your opponent's side of the board to your side, and then you can use it as a link material. Buckwheat. Which is really good. Next up, Vermilion Dragon Mech. Simply because, yeah, it's a big body, and it does banish tuners to destroy stuff, but it's also a pretty big body. God, Buckwheat. Sorry, my mom's cat is being very obnoxious. So there we go, Vermilion. And the final synchro, you had to have seen it coming. Hang on. Let me give you guys a hint. It's on the back of my sleeves for my extra deck. It is Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. You can actually make this card fairly easily. And it's a really good, everybody knows it's a really good card. Banish a card out of your opponent's hand, graveyard, and field. Yeah, sure, let me just make you lose 3 cards. Cool. Next up, we're going into XZ's monsters, because yes, I run a plethora of different things. We have one copy of Abyss Dweller. I'm just kidding on the plethora of things, because obviously Abyss Dweller gains 500 attack. If it has a material that was a water, obviously it's going to have a material that's a water. And then quick effect to stop all grave effects for a turn, which isn't bad. And then, obviously, I'm just going to show both of these together. Nova, you're never going to use his effect, so don't even worry about it. And then you're going to use Infinity, which can steal a attack position monster or a special summon monster. Yeah, attack position monster and attach it to this card. And then he also has a negation, an Omni Negate by detaching a material, which is really good. Now we're kicking off into our Link monsters, and I'm going to show you the 2 copies of Mr. Starboy that I run, that I'm probably going to end up cutting down to 1 copy, because you only really need 1 copy, because he can put himself back into the extra deck. But he gives all your water monsters 500 attack, and he makes all fire monsters lose 400 attack, which is really good for the Salamangreat matchup, right? But yeah. And I mean, if you have a Dynamist monster in your graveyard that you want back, and he goes to the graveyard, you add that back. Not bad. Next up, we have Zefram Metaltron. Metaltron is honestly a really, really powerful Link monster for Pendulum decks, and I don't know why he's not ran. Once per turn, just banish a monster summoned from the extra deck on both players' fields, and they return during the end phase or something like that. And then he also has an effect to where if a card he points to leaves the field, you can add a card, or I think a yeah, if a monster or monsters this card points to a special summon from the extra deck and is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, add a monster from your graveyard or face a pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. And the fact that he has 3 downward arrows is amazing for a pendulum deck. And he's also a 2500 body. So, you know, it gets rid of a pesky, like, floodgate monster, or gets rid of a temporary monster. It's not bad. He's really good. Next, all of these next cards are very optional. A lot of stuff in this is optional. You don't even really need the extra deck, minus, like, some Link 2s, some generic Link 2s, and, maybe Metaltron. But, we have 1 copy of Mekk-Knight Crusadia Abram Axe. 3k body, Link 4 requires 2+ monster summon from the extra deck. So basically you make a Link 2 before pendulum summoning, then you pendulum summon 2 from the extra deck, make Abram Axe. He's a 3k body that can honest himself whenever he battles a special summon monster, which is amazing. And I think he's also unaffected by special summon monster effects. Oh yeah, and he cannot be cannot target this card with card effects. Also, their monsters cannot target... Oh, he also makes it to where your opponent can only attack him with monsters. So, that's really good. He's not really budgety, but hey. This one's just kind of for fun, because you can basically always proc his effect, or proc its effect. That's Topologic Bomber Dragon. Because, you know, 3 downward arrows and an upward arrow, you're always going to be able to proc its effect with a pendulum summon. And 3k, 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 3k. Yeah, I love him. I just don't really make him as often anymore, especially after Electromite went away. And lastly, Borreload Dragon. Borreload is an amazing card. Everybody knows, because everybody uses it. And if they don't use it, they're probably running a deck that doesn't need it. Quick effect to make an opponent's monster permanently lose 500 attack. And it has a battle effect that can steal a monster for a turn. Which is... or until the end of the next turn. And then it sends it to the graveyard. But it has to go to an arrow he points to. I mean, it's okay. It's another 3k body. But anyways, I'm going to stop rambling. And I'm going to let you guys view the deck in all of its glory one more time. So anyways, if you guys did enjoy this deck profile, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It really makes me want to keep doing these. My Blue Eyes deck profile is almost at 10 likes, so if we could get that to 10 likes, really appreciate it. And if we can get this video to 5 likes, well, 5 likes might be a lot, but 3 likes. 3 likes. I've seen consistent 3 likes. I don't know what you guys get. I mean, it's just motivation for me, I guess. I'll keep pumping out deck profiles. I'll keep bringing you guys deck profiles. Right now, I think I'm running out of decks to do deck profiles on. Until I start getting more decks to do deck profiles on. But until next time, I will see you all y'all in the next video. Oh, again, be sure to hit the like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Peace.